So welcome everyone. Good afternoon and thank you so much for signing up to the second installment of the ongoing series, Great Means More, How Leaders Reframe Their Mindset to Build High Trust Teams. Now this webinar is in partnership with Siegen Solutions, co-presented by 24/7 AI. My name is Zoe Rasal. I'm the marketing business partner for Great Place to Work Philippines, and in this session, we will all be learning about the role of leadership to building a culture of trust, understanding the neuroscience of trust to make effective decisions as a leader, mindset shifts for leadership to gain trust and respect among colleagues, mental models to build agile and effective teams and improve employee decision-making, and real challenges and key culture lessons from the 2023 Best Workplace in the Small category, Siegen Solutions. Now, a couple of house rules: be polite, mics off, camera off. Now, this is a learning session, okay? I repeat, it's a learning session that's jam-packed with takeaways. So heads up, our pacing will be a little bit fast, but fret not, a recording of this webinar will be available on our website within the next few days for you to look back on and absorb. And in case you have people here who have registered but haven't made it yet, just feel free to send them over the link when it's available. Lastly, we do not issue certificates of attendance at the moment. But in case this is your first time attending one of our events, Great Place to Work is the global authority on workplace culture. Our mission is to build a better world by helping every place become a great place to work for all. We believe that work has the power to transform society, and at our core, we feel that the world should be fair, just, and equitable for all people, and that business is uniquely capable of driving change with over 10.2 million employees represented all around the world in over 10,000 companies in 97 countries with over 92 languages. Now, what we do is in our brand name. We help you prove that your company is a high trust workplace by delivering the brand power you need to attract the right people. We help you communicate your value to high caliber candidates and offer you one of the most important factors of their decision making: credibility. We're also the data scientists behind the list of Fortune 100 best companies to work for. But make no mistake, there is no pay to play. Again, there is no pay to play. We simply help you make smarter people decisions that positively affect your business. Your employees take a survey as short as your break, but as potent as your coffee. You get the results you need in real time, and from there, we have consultants that can help you plan your next steps. Now, I'll be sharing more about this after the session, so if you're interested to see who we've worked with, why we're so passionate about what we do, stick around till the end of the webinar. Now, I'm excited to introduce our first speaker. Ben. Bill is a globally certified neuroscience coach and neurolinguistic programming trainer, having taken neuroscience courses from various world-renowned institutions and having spoken at TEDx conferences. But prior to becoming a global keynote speaker and trainer, Ben has garnered extensive senior executive corporate experience in various cross-functional disciplines. Now, next, our second speaker is the co-founder and managing partner of Siegen Solutions, the #1 best workplace for 2023 in the small category, Aya Palmera Montebon. Having graduated from UP Diliman, Aya spent 15 years in advertising with experience in handling name brands such as Coca-Cola, Jollibee, P&G, and J&J, just to name a few. And Aya discovered that her purpose in life is to help people find employment opportunities in companies that prioritize fairness and job security. Enter Siegen Solutions, an organization that focuses on volume recruitment for multinational BPOs and tech companies. Last but not least is my own leader and mentor. Moderating the conversation is Antoinette Mendoza Talasig, or Tony for short. Not only is she our managing partner, but Tony is also a principal consultant for Great Place to Work ASEAN and has worked in partnership with Singapore government agencies, SMEs, MNCs, and a few Fortune 100 companies across industries and geographies. Now, Tony will also be presenting a short talk entitled Trust Architects: How Leaders Shape High Trust Workplace Cultures. A very exciting webinar for us indeed. Now, we've got an engaging afternoon planned ahead with 3 industry experts, so ready your screenshots, hold on to your questions, and enjoy the webinar. Happily passing on the mic to you, Tony.
Thank you, Zoe. Good afternoon, everyone. We are so happy to have all of you here with us today. Just like what Zoe said, it's going to be a packed afternoon. So let's just jump into it. Trust architects. How do we as leaders function as trust architects? So I guess many of you may have been familiar with the Edelman Trust Barometer. It's an annual global study by the communications firm Edelman. Well, I myself, I have been following them for a couple of years now. And in this study, Edelman ascertains the level of trust in institutions such as the government, business, media, and non-government organizations or NGOs worldwide. And over the past years, Edelman reports that we are amidst a global cycle of distrust. In their latest 2023 report, Edelman also warns that globally, people are facing economic challenges made worse by lack of trust safety net. Now, what does that exactly mean? Here are some snapshots of what's in the report. It says that 24 in 28 countries surveyed, they are experiencing an all-time low regarding the people's economic outlook, with families fearing they will not be better off in 5 years. The people's anxieties are driven by personal economic concerns such as losing their jobs, their ability or inability to cope with the increasing expenses because of inflation, and some societal fears like climate change, which I think we're all experiencing, wars, and the impact of this on food and energy supplies. And so while Philippines is not particularly covered in the Edelman study, I think many of us are aware that these are similar concerns we face in the country. Consistent with their previous year's results, according to Edelman Trust Barometer, business is the only institution perceived as competent and ethical. So why is this important for us to know? Why am I starting with this? It's because this presents a high calling for the business leaders to take a more active role in meeting social responsibilities and in trust building. At Great Place to Work, we believe that work has the power to transform society, and we do this through trust building. We define a great workplace as one wherein you trust the people you work for, have pride in what you do, and enjoy the people you work with. What makes a great workplace is the quality of relationships that you have in your organization. And we know that leaders play a crucial role in building a high-trust workplace culture. Great leaders do this with credibility, respect, and fairness. Now, what do we mean by this? Credibility speaks of your reputation as a leader beyond your job title. You have credibility when your employees see you as competent in running the business. You provide them with clear directions in where the organization is going and how to get there. Credibility is also established through effective communication. It is nailed by your integrity when people see you as a leader who walk the talk and you deliver as promised. Second is respect. If you've joined our webinar for a couple of times now, I'm sure you've heard me say this many times. I personally like this dimension called respect. Because respect here, it goes beyond what is deeply ingrained in our Filipino culture, wherein we respect elders and people in authority. Respect is about you as an employee feeling supported and cared for by those in authority, by your leaders. And respect is built when there is a safe space for employees to collaborate. But it may start with seemingly little things, such as employees feeling genuinely appreciated for the good work that they've done and being provided with the tools and resources that they need to be productive at work. But then more and more these days, respect transcends professional support. It is about being recognized and treated as a person, not just as an employee. It also goes beyond having a physically safe place to work into one that is a psychologically and emotionally healthy workplace. Third is fairness. Well, fairness is said to be a fundamental and universal human need. It is something that we all need since we were young. At the workplace, employees perceive their leaders as fair when they are treated equally regardless of their position, age, gender, sexual orientation, or race. When employees receive equitable pay and equal opportunities for recognition. So all this play a big role in employees' experience of fairness at work. Likewise, managers' behaviors and decisions influence the perceived fairness at work. Do you as leaders, do your employees see you as avoiding favoritism at work? Do they see promotions being given to those who are well-deserving? Those are all aspects that influence perceived fairness in your organization. So while there is an increasing awareness and involvement in many organizations in regards to creating great workplaces in the Philippines, and this is evident by the rapid growth in the Great Place to Work certified companies in the country, we believe that there is still a lot more that we can do. In the recent Great Place to Work recognition gala, you saw the videos earlier that Zoe played, I shared 3 key observations on what is most important in building trust in the Philippines workplaces and where leaders play a key role. So these are the 3 observations that we've shared. Number 1, through the years, Philippine employees have been really consistent with what they need from their leaders. They need leaders to walk the talk, engage in open two-way communication, and involve them in decisions that affect their jobs. Number 2 observation, well, we Filipinos have always been highly sociable. But now we need more than a workplace that caters to those social needs. What we need is a psychologically and emotionally healthy place to work. And third, last but not least, employees are saying that they need a caring culture. And how do they experience this? It is when their leaders are fair and respectful. Many leaders, HR leaders even, would say that creating and sustaining a high trust workplace culture is not really an easy job. So why do we need to do it? What are the benefits that we are seeing and the Great Place to Work certified companies are experiencing? So here are some of those. One is talent attraction. Your employees are your best brand ambassadors. Through effective employee referrals, you can lower your cost per hire by about 50%. But of course, this only happens when your employees are highly engaged and when you're able to retain them. And I'm sure we've all heard it, today's workforce, millennials and Gen Zs, they need more than attractive pay. They are 50% more likely to build their careers at a great workplace. Third is employee well-being, and these are very interesting statistics. Studies show that employees at a high-trust workplace, they experience 74% less stress, 40% less burnout, and they have 106% more energy at work. And this results to being 50% more productive than employees in a low-trust work environment. And of course, all this yield better financial results. And so now that I have shared what are important for Philippine employees in terms of trust building, and we've also established what are the benefits of having a high trust workplace, I want to spend a couple minutes in closing and let's look at some of the common challenges that companies face in creating a culture of trust. And I want this to be more relevant for most people in the audience. And so we've gathered the main challenges from non-list makers' perspective. And who are the non-list makers? These are the companies that are not named one of the Philippines' best workplaces in 2023. So these are the 3 common challenges that they face. Number 1 is equity. So in many years, pandemic or not, among all of the dimensions of trust at workplace, the employee's perception of their leader's fairness, I think, has been one of the most challenging to address. Okay, and so 2 of the most bottom scoring statements that we've seen amongst non-list makers, again, are this: people are paid fairly for the work that they do, and I receive a fair share of the profits made by this organization. 77% of employees of non-list makers are saying that, yes, I receive a fair share of the profits that are made by this organization. Compare that to the experiences of best workplaces in the country, 88%. And I also want to highlight the experience of employees at Siegen Solutions, where Aya, their CEO, will be sharing a bit more with us later on how they create such workplace culture, wherein 96% of their employees say that I receive a share fair of the profits made by this organization, and 100% say that we are paid fairly for the work that they do. Again, this is quite a feat for them to accomplish because, again, as I've mentioned, this is one of the most common challenges of non-list makers of many organizations in the country. Second challenge is impartiality. Well, interestingly, in the past 2 to 3 years, we observe a decline in employees' experience of impartiality, Also part of fairness, particularly employees' perception around fairness on promotion and managers not playing favorites. Their employees, 80% of their employees have consistent positive experience around this, compared to best workplaces where 91% of their employees are having positive experience. And again, Siegen Solutions surpassing even the best workplaces benchmark. The third challenge is collaboration and care. Well, leaders can do more to collaborate with their employees by involving them in decision-making process. Employees also need a more psychologically and emotionally healthy place to work. So it is interesting to see, the experience of best workplaces and also, again, Siegen Solutions and how they're able to create a more collaborative and caring workplace that would help you address some of these common challenges that organizations are experiencing in the country. Now, as leaders, we are trust architects in our organization, and to shape trust in our workplaces, we need to demonstrate ability or competencies to lead the business and our people. We need to connect emotionally with our teams, and we also need to lead with integrity. And we know that that's a tall order, especially given today's environment that continuously change at a much faster pace, and where we ourselves as leaders are also more prone to burnout. So what I shared are ways on how leaders function as trust architects in our respective organizations. And as the chart shows, we have something to learn from best workplaces such as Siegen. Like how Siegen creates high trust workplace culture by developing great leaders that are exceptional decision makers. I think it is said that great leaders are the ones who shape the environment into one that allows the people's brain to fully function the way that they are designed to be. And so I encourage you to wait until the end of this session. Aya will share more about that in a while. But before that, I want to step back and perhaps, maybe we should take some time to understand how does our brain actually work, so that we can have a better appreciation of what we can do better as leaders in shaping a high trust workplace culture. It is very rare that we get to hear from a neuroscience coach. And in fact, this is the first time that we are having one in our webinar. And so I hope you are as excited as I am to listen to Ben Ampil, who in the next 20 minutes will be sharing very interesting facts about the neuroscience of trust. Over to you, Ben.
Thank you so much, Tony, for that enlightening introduction.
We can see your screen, Ben.
So the neuroscience of trust and leadership, according to Batman, old ways will not open new doors. As Tony has so eloquently described, the disruptions of the current workplace has changed the boundary lines. We have to be able to figure out old place into new place. Fortunately, last year we had no less than Tom Cruise to lead us the way.
We made it to the target. And superior enemy aircraft intercepted you on your way out.
Then it's a dogfight.
Against fifth-generation fighters.
Yeah, we still have a chance.
In an F-18.
It's not the plane, sir. It's the pilot.
Exactly.
It's not the plane, sir. It's the pilot. We will always have problems, pre-COVID, after COVID, moving toward COVID. But if we drive a plane well, it's not the plane, sir. It's the pilot. It's how you and I use our brains. We will become Top Gun people. What distinguishes success and failure? If we look back into the animal kingdom, we're not the tallest, that's a giraffe. We're not the biggest, that's the elephant. We're not the fiercest, that's the lion. We can swim, we can fly. Among the animal kingdom, we have the most sophisticated cortex. It's like the crumpled paper you imagine every time you think of a brain. Cortex actually stands for covering. The human brain determines who you are. My brain, your brain determines our personality. It determines how we act and how we think. Yet most people know more about how their phones work than how their brains work. And from the time we were born to the time we die, one programming of the brain is that we seek connections. And the quality of our connections determine the quality of our lives. And if we're happy in life, we are happy everywhere else. And we tend to be better productive citizens. And connections are linked to what Tony has just said, trust. Now, every time we talk about the brain and the neuroscience of trust and what it does, our brain goes bonkers. It's like this scene when Leonardo DiCaprio was trying to ask for a date from a Syrian nurse.
Yeah,
Yes?
I was wondering if maybe you wanted to have a conversation sooner than next week. Maybe, inshallah, later this afternoon, if that wouldn't make you uncomfortable.
Well, for you and me to be able to do that, first we would have to have a conversation about the proper way to have a conversation.
That's two date monies right there and then. Date one, to have a conversation about how to have a conversation. Date two, how to have the conversation itself, and no more date three. But we have a solution. In order to learn about the brain, we will adopt brain learning principles. Did you know that the brain prefers good storytelling? That's why we have Zoom fatigue. And as opposed to we can watch Netflix 8 hours a day. When you use brain aligned principles in learning, you will not be pouring into an empty bucket with holes, and your learning will be enhanced. So in this 20-minute talk, we will have 353 slides and 6 movie clips.
The F-18 NATOPS contains everything they want you to know about your aircraft. I'm assuming you know the book inside and out.
Damn right.
Yeah.
Damn straight.
You got it.
So does your enemy. And we're off. But what the enemy doesn't know is your limits. I intend to find them, test them, push beyond. Today we'll start with what you only think you know. You show me what you're made of.
So as Tom Cruise said, marketplace now, your competitors know your rule book, know your game plans. They know your limits. The question is, do you know your limits? Do you know what you're capable of doing? And unlike the F-18, which was built with a manual, we weren't born with an operations manual. We just have to fudge around. With advances in technology, we're now able to understand the workings of the human brain. And the better we understand how our brains work, the better we can make our brains work for us. And we will not only rely on Tom Cruise, we will also rely on Batman. Simply imagine neuroscience can be defined just by remembering Batman. Neuroscience is the study of the B brain, how it A acts, how it T thinks, so you can manage your actions and thoughts. That's basically neuroscience. If you Google neuroscience, it will say that neuroscience is a study of the brain and the nervous system, but that wouldn't fit into Batman. So we have to understand the programming of the human brain. The human brain essentially has two languages. The first is electrical impulses. Growing old or cognitive decline is a function of electrical wiring and signals diminishing. So as we get older, the memories fade because the electrical conductivity over time diminishes. The second is chemicals, and these are called neurotransmitters. So everything you do in life, all the emotions that you feel, if you, for example, you have a daughter or a teenager son saying, "Mommy, Daddy, I'm in love," you can just tell them that's just a function of electricity and chemicals. You'll snap out of it. But kidding aside, when we talk about trust, we're referring to one particular neurotransmitter, and it is called oxytocin. You might have heard of oxytocin. Oxytocin is called the cuddle neurotransmitter. If you have pets, especially those during the lockdowns where we were isolated from our normal social interactions, having a pet has been shown to raise oxytocins and make us feel good. But its primary functions actually pertain to labor and childbirth and aiding the mother in providing breast milk while they're feeding, mother to infant bonding. Now, what makes oxytocin good? Oxytocin is generated whenever we initiate pro-social connection behaviors, and it is inhibited by stress. So again, we generate oxytocin whenever we manifest pro-social as opposed to antisocial, pro-social connection behaviors and it is inhibited by stress. When people feel that they are trusted, their brains respond by producing oxytocin. A rise in oxytocin levels result in people's behavior becoming more trustworthy. And people who feel trusted become more trustworthy as a result of increased levels of oxytocin. So trust begets trust. Trust leads to trustworthiness, which leads to better trustworthiness. Oxytocin begets oxytocin. And putting it more marketplace metrics, as Tony has said earlier, if you have a high trust organization, that organization will experience 40% less burnout, 106% more energy at work, 70% less stress, and 29% higher work satisfaction. I don't know about you, but those seem to be good numbers to strive for. But did you know that these are not limited to us human beings? The Society for Endocrinology, back in 2016, did the research. They found out that happy cows make more nutritious milk. Happy cows make better milk. So if it works for cows, I'm going to buy it anytime. And one tenet in performance management is that well-being, when you and I are feeling well, we tend to do well. So well-being leads to well-doing. And when we're doing well, it loops back to making us feel even better. So well-being leads to well-doing, which enhances well-being. But if we're not feeling well, if our well-being is challenged, our ability to do well also suffers. World War II, and none of us were born during that time, began in 1939, ended in 1945. And back in March 6, 2021, the top World Health Organization officials said that COVID-19 pandemic has led to more mass trauma globally than after World War II. That's quite a statement to make because if you remember, World War II was when we had two nuclear bombs that were detonated in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Let's go closer back to home. Back in Southeast Asia, there was a State of the Global Workplace Survey. This was last year. Which country experienced the highest daily stress? Philippines represent. Iba talaga Pilipino. The Filipinos were the most daily stressed country in Southeast Asia. So we said well-being equals well-doing if we're very stressed, if according to World Health Organization, the global economy, the global population is like they have gone through World War II, the stress meters are just going off the charts. And well-being, which is negated, means we will not be able to do well. That's why back in 2020, I was interviewed a lot and for free on ANC to discuss managed mental health using neuroscience. I was also featured on TV Patrol to discuss caution fatigue, another function of the COVID pandemic using neuroscience. Guys, if you feel that neuroscience is complicated, try explaining neuroscience in Tagalog. So we said that stress is one inhibitor of oxytocin. So if we want oxytocin because it is a key determinant and driver for stress, it is actually neurologically based. We have to understand the nature of stress. There are two elements of the human brain which account for stress, the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. Let's just refer to the prefrontal cortex as TEX. The prefrontal cortex or TEX is responsible for rational thinking. Did you know that our prefrontal cortex, or the cortex in general, the part of the brain that sets us most advanced among everyone in the animal kingdom, is the last brain of the brain to be developed. So it develops fully between the ages of 18 to 24. So chances are we all graduated from college with underdeveloped prefrontal cortices. And do we ever doubt why teenagers behave the way they do? At age 17, their prefrontal cortices have not even fully developed. Coupled with that raging hormones, then you have a very erratic child. TEX is responsible for looking out for patterns. And patterns have to be established deliberately, intentionally, and purposefully. When you're trying to put together a jigsaw puzzle, you just don't top out all the pieces and on the floor and put them all together. You first look at the box and try to recognize and identify the pattern that you're aiming for. The human brain can do 6 things. The 5 would be the external stimuli sources: seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, and smelling. And the 6 is where self-talk or the meaning we assign to the reality. We have around 250 plus participants in this webinar, and all of you see the same stimuli of the 5 senses, but all of us have unique self-talks. All of us assign different meanings, and that is a function of text. When you do a Google search, especially now with the digital economy, who does the Googling? Is it chat? No. You type. You can either type problems in my life or things I can be thankful for. That is the purview of text, which is responsible for rational thinking. Now, rational thinking takes a lot of energy. The average brain weighs about 2% of total weight. So if you weigh 100 pounds, your brain just weighs 2 pounds. But that 2-pound organ is the most energy consumptive organ of your body. It consumes 20% of all your caloric intake. Very high energy, very high consumptive. And in order for the brain to keep us alive, it tries to conserve that energy. How? It takes on mental shortcuts referred to as biases. Going through the brain, getting all the information, analyzing them takes a lot of energy. We take shortcuts. Similar to the picture, the local government engaged a contractor and an architect to build a very, very good pavement. What do you and I do? We cut across the lawn, mas madali eh. User experience takes shortcuts. That's the example of a mental bias. And a rational brain does that in an effort to save energy. Now let's go to amygdala or MIGS. MIGS is responsible for emotions. Unlike the prefrontal cortex or the context, which was the last part of the brain to develop, the amygdala was the earliest part of the brain to develop. And back in the primitive days, they were responsible for only one thing. They weren't worried about what show to watch on Netflix. They were just worried about survival. Is there a fire? Is there a dinosaur? Do we have food? So MIGS was looking for threats 24/7 and is always looking out for threats, whether real or imagined. Now, granted, the threats that the primitive men face are no longer the same type of threats that you and I face now, but the programming of MIGS has not changed. It's always on the lookout for threats, whether real or imagined. Imaginary threats, or if your boss really steps on you, that's a real threat. And whenever those threats are triggered, whether real or imagined, MIGS turns on the threat response. And when the threat response is turned on, you either freeze, flight, or fight. So we want to avoid the threat response. So we have MIGS responsible for emotions, text responsible for rational thinking, emotions, and rationality. If you try to put them together, MIGS on the left, emotions always takes precedence because emotions takes less energy than thinking through it. Think about it. Which one is easier, to be angry or to try to think through, why am I angry? Trying to think through the logic of it takes energy. That's why it's very easy for us just to snap out and be angry. And again, this is the image of text, MIGS, and amygdala and MIGS, prefrontal cortex and text. MIGS always takes precedence. And when MIGS is on fire, our ability to think shuts down. I say again, whenever MIGS is on fire, we cannot think rationally. So what is the default mechanism of the brain? Is it rational or emotional? We would like to think that it is rational. It is not, because it requires a lot of energy. The default reaction of your brain and mine is actually emotional. So emotions are just very easy. It just happens everywhere without thinking. Whenever MIGS responsible for emotions is on fire, it shuts down your ability to think. So we want to manage the threat response. We want to manage stress because this is an inhibitor to oxytocin. Whom do we try to focus on? Is it MIGS or is it text? We'll focus on MIGS because he's the one responsible for emotions. He's the one responsible for irrational thinking. The solution is they've also measured that because of the propensity of MIGS to keep us alive by looking out for threats, MIGS is a 10-second lead time over text. So whenever you're angry, count to 10 and you will be calmer. So the solution for resilience is you try to bridge the gap, the 10-second gap between MIGS and text. And this encourages trust connections. One key, simply count to 10. My mother always told me when I was young, when you're angry, count to 10. It turns out there's a scientific basis for that. Also, you want to try to avoid what are the irritants that agitate MIGs. If you want to manage threat and response, simply think of SCARF, because the triggers that agitate MIGs that manage the threat response can be summarized by the acronym SCARF. S stands for status, which mean relative importance and standing. C stands for predictability and security. A stands for autonomy, which your ability to make and control choices. Relatedness stands for a sense of belonging and acceptance. And fairness stands for sense of justice and impartiality. You're able to manage threat response, and you would be encouraging oxytocin if you keep an eye on SCARF, namely status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. So you get two things. When you focus on SCARF, you're able to manage the threat response. And when the threat response is activated, your prefrontal cortex is unable to function. Secondly, if you manage SCARF, you actually encourage the production of oxytocin. Let's apply now. Whenever you do anything between the full range of options of leadership and management, strat planning, and whatever, you have to lead. And what are the functions and what are the traits of a good leader? First of all, a good leader understands how his brain and the brains of his followers work. We will see two examples which involve life and death situations. The first is in the Hunger Games.
You really want to know how to stay alive? You get people to like you. Oh, not what you were expecting. When you're in the middle of the games and you're starving or freezing, some water, a knife, or even some matches can mean the difference between life and death. And those things only come from sponsors. And to get sponsors, you have to make people like you. And right now, sweetheart, you're not off to a real good start. There it is.
So the coach, Woody Harrelson, was supposed to give tips to Katniss, Jennifer Lawrence, about how to stay alive. He just said, what? Make people like you. He did not tell her how. Now, the second example is the movie Gladiator.
Anyone here been in the army?
Yes. I thought we could have been about it.
You can help me. Whatever comes out of these gates, we've got a better chance of survival if we work together. Do you understand? If we stay together, we survive.
Pleased to bring you the Legionnaires of Scipio Africana!
So in that movie, Russell Crowe was the captain of the Roman Empire, and he was captured as a slave. All of his teammates are slaves. They have nothing in common. They don't know each other. And they're put in the center of the Colosseum to fight well-armed men. So these are people who had nothing in common, no relationship, no training, presumably in military warfare, underarmed. And how is Russell Crowe able to command trust, command loyalty, and make them work? Let's use the scarf model. Did Russell Crowe or Maximus give them status? Yes. He was the captain of the French Empire, Roman Empire. He did not lord his position over them. Did he give them certainty? Yes. Let's fight together as one. We will live. Did he give them autonomy? Yes. He said single column, diamond, but he did not micromanage how they work. Did they give them relatedness? Yes. They were treated as slaves. I'm not the captain. We're all here in this fight together. Was he fair? Yes. What is the difference between an excellent game and game excellence? An excellent game makes you win the game. Game excellence makes you win the championship. And now that you're equipped with some basic understanding of the human brain, you're now aimed and positioned for life excellence. You don't have to take pills in order to be happy, have self-esteem, have confidence, and have peace of mind. Just think about these things, understand how the brain works with respect to those desired emotions, and just wear them. So again, in summary, the human brain determines who you and I are. It determines our personality. It determines how you and I think. And one of the key programmings of the human brain is connection. We are programmed from birth to death to seek connections. The better our connections are, the better our life will be. And in the workplace, this is rooted in trust. And the neurotransmitter that governs trust is oxytocin. Oxytocin is generated whenever we initiate pro-social connection behaviors, and it is inhibited by trust. So your brain works in a balance. Just remember Batman, neuroscience is study of the B brain, how it acts, how it thinks, so you can manage your actions and thoughts. We remember the two elements of the brain responsible for stress. On the left is amygdala, MIGS. On the right is prefrontal cortex, TEX. Now we understand that MIGS is looking out for threats. It's one of the earliest part of the brain to be developed. It is programmed to keep us alive. And TEX has a 10-second lead time over our MIGS has a 10-second lead time over TEX, which is responsible for rational thinking. So because of that, there's always a tendency for MIGS to take precedence. And whenever MIGS is on fire, we are not able to think properly. I say again, whenever MIGS is on fire, we're not able to think properly. So how do we remedy this imbalance? Simply put scarf, and you'll be able to balance and neutralize the operations of MIGS and TEX. And that leads to trust. You can break through any walls. Greatness is just waiting for you. And one more thing, if there's an imbalance, you've had a long day, you want to clear your head, you want to be able to make a clear decision. Should I trust the situation? Should I trust myself? Should I trust others? You want to clear your head. You might look like this, you might feel like this. The solution is simple eye movement integration. You just follow your eyes on the 4 quadrants. Doing so activates as many brain areas as possible. So you become fully brained, as they would say. And that's the eye movement integration. So rather than feeling mentally stuck, you are now fully engaged. But don't do it too much because you will look like this. You don't want that to happen. So these are the possibilities with your eyes. Imagine the possibilities with your mind.
Wait! You could die. At least tell me your name.
It's not who I am underneath, but what I do that defines me.
Bruce?
So as you can see, if you want to develop trust, don't talk like that. They will think you're a freak. So learn from it. It's not what you are inside, it's what you do. Life rewards actions, not intentions. So take actions. If you want to have brain-aligned leadership training solutions, send me an email at ben@benampil.com and excellence will just await you. Back to you, Tony.
Thank you so much, Ben. That was very, very informative. I was also practicing my eyes looking around. Ben, I have lots of questions for you, but I think I will save it later towards the end. I think one of my key takeaway here is that we all know that our brains don't function really well when we are stressed, afraid, or of course, even when we are depressed, right? So remember to put on the scarf. But I think also like one question I'm asking myself, and my question for the leaders in the room is that, so how do we create an environment that, stress is, say still part of the job, but then how do we create an environment that's still less stressful? Or better yet, is there anything, good reflection for leaders again, is there anything that we do as leaders that probably is causing our employees to feel stressed, afraid, or even depressed? Like, could be the tone of our voice, our words, it could be a blind spot that we need to discover. I'll get back to you later, Ben, but now, thank you so much, Ben. Now let's hear from Aya, President and CEO of Siegen Solutions, on how they create the right environment and raise good decision makers for a culture of instant trust.
Hi, Tony.
Aya, pass it over to you.
Let me just fix my screen. Can you see it already?
You can see it. It's all good.
All right. Okay. Well, many thanks to Great Place to Work, Tony, Zoe, for inviting me to talk today. Usually, I'm a bit of a recluse, but it's an honor to talk about something that's very important to our organization. Thank you so much as well, everybody, for sharing your precious time with us. Hopefully, this short talk will add value to each and every one of you. Okay, so let's talk about the power of mental models in developing good decision makers in the organization, especially during critical moments, and how it promotes trust. And some of you here might already be familiar with it. Some of you might already know it from other terms such as cognitive framework or systems thinking or schemas. Well, I think of it as uncommon common sense. Brian Greene, a physicist, once said, critical thinking is the key to unlocking the power of curiosity and embracing the discomfort of challenging our own beliefs. So this quote emphasizes the importance of critical thinking, curiosity, and commitment to seeking and accepting truth, even if it challenges your beliefs or your preconceived notions. And that's very much common sense. But do you or do we really intentionally practice it in every important decision that we have to make without letting our emotions take over? Or how do we make sure that we can see the truth or the real problem that we need to solve? How do we produce original thought or the right creative solution to a problem? How? Where do you start? What are the steps? And I'm an action man, parang action star. While I do appreciate theories and concepts, I need to know how can I apply it into my day-to-day life, right? So mental models are the frameworks that I use, and it can help us understand and navigate this complex world. Your life, whatever you have now, that's the result of all the decisions that you have made in the past. So how can you ensure that you make the best decisions that you can every time? So you'll have the future that you want. And same is true with our leaders who make the critical decisions for the organizations. We have to be able to trust them in making the best decisions that they can at the moment, no matter the outcome. And we have to be able to trust our teammates as well, that they're making good, rational choices, decisions with a long view. But why am I talking about this? Let me talk about why the concept of mental models is very important to our work culture in Siegen Solutions. We have 5 key drivers for our work culture aside from the mandatories like integrity and high competence. Like first is our devotion to the company mission. We are very lucky that we have an intrinsically built-in mission in our work, which is to help people get jobs in good organizations. And this means that the clients that we have, all of them are legitimate, mostly multinational, and compensate competitively or at the very least fairly. We also have a rigid team selection process because we want to grow our leaders from within, and we do not hire from outside if we can, except maybe for the consultants that we have. And we are tightly knit, never transactional. We can all work cohesively. No matter who partners with who, we can all work cohesively. Our employee programs are deeply rooted in this, always. And also, it's 10x everything. We perform 10 times our company size. We produce 10 times what our current resources usually allow for, compared to other organizations. And our tools, the tools that we use, everything that we use is chosen based on how it will be able to 10x us. And lastly, long-term thinking. The board and I, we want to make sure that the company thrives even after we're long gone. And this means that we take succession plan, succession plan very seriously, very HBO. This is the reason we train everyone on good decision making, and we cannot 10x if we need to micromanage all the time. If we can't even give autonomy to our people on a day-to-day basis, we cannot scale. If we have to be present at every tiny thing that needs decision making, if we do not train our people to make the best decisions as early as in their 20s, they will never develop the leadership skills and the confidence needed when they succeed us. John Maxwell said, consistently making good decisions is a pathway to sustainable success. So this is very, very, important to us as we plan our succession. And many times, in the loudest voice in the room would get to steer the direction of a project. But we built Siegen to be a haven, even for introverts, because of our thinking processes. We really aim for zero politics. And I trust that our team members, when they interface with our clients or give feedback about their team members, that they gave it ran through a good thinking process. I trust them when they design and conduct our operations, and they do trust me whenever I make big organizational changes, which happens very often. When you know that the people that you work with are capable of consistently making good decisions, the best decisions that they can at the moment, no matter the outcome, it builds trust and confidence. And what are the most common causes of bad decisions? First is, assumptions, possibly made from small sample sizes, or, being in an echo chamber, or ego, wanting the world to work the way we want it to work instead of the way it really does, therefore leading to blind spots. You have limited awareness or understanding of your own weaknesses or biases. Or maybe you're just concerned, you want to look good, so you just conform with the way things are being done, even, you won't challenge it because you don't want to stir the pot. And lastly, the undisciplined thinking that leads to an inability to, know how to ask, and then what? What will be the consequences of this decision, of this tiny thing that I changed, or this thing that I turned a blind eye into? So it's hard to build trust when leaders and team members consistently make ego-driven or under-processed decisions. And if we do not have a way to process things clearly in our heads, this happens to the best of us. So how can you create exceptional leaders? Or how do you become one? How do you create an exceptional team? A team that can do great things and make your workplace a great place to work. Of course, I have to admit, we had our fair share of emotional moments in the office. I had many, many, many emotional, immature decisions in the past, and we acknowledge that as humans, our feelings and biases affect our decisions and actions. But we can use mental models to intentionally re-engineer our mindsets to see the truth and to make the best decisions that we can. We always ask in the office, whenever we have meetings, is this the law of man or the law of nature? Because you can't fight against nature. So this is a thinking framework that my business mentor, William Bantiga, taught me. And I've really applied it on a day-to-day basis. For example, a non-performing employee that we have to consistently retrain. Law of man says, I want it to work out. I'm a good boss. I can change this person. What kind of leader am I if I can't even help this person to improve? But law of nature says there's inertia. Hello, there's inertia, and inertia is when objects want to keep doing what they're already doing, like staying still or moving at a consistently slow speed unless something or someone else pushes them or pulls them. If we need to consistently or constantly push someone or rehabilitate a person to perform, well, that person doesn't belong in an organization that wants to continuously adapt or to 10x everything. And we all know this. Making good decisions is not a random process, but it requires a deliberate and disciplined approach. You have to be able to evaluate information and weigh potential outcomes before reaching a conclusion or making a choice. Because it involves a lot of ego control. It involves a lot of self-control, a lot of critical thinking, and objective analysis. And the good news is we can all do this. We can all achieve this. And we can do this one way is through the application of mental models. Because workplace trust blooms when disciplined thinking is embraced. Why? Because disciplined thinking promotes consistency. It makes you reliable to your teammates, and you produce sound decision making. When people approach their work with disciplined thinking, they demonstrate a commitment to rationality, logic, and careful consideration of relevant factors. Who, of course, you want to work with a person who's like that, right? Because it promotes transparency and accountability. By consistently applying disciplined thinking, an organization creates a culture of fairness and integrity in the workplace. Others, your teammates, your bosses, your clients can rely on us to approach challenges with thoughtfulness, and we can communicate openly, and we can, we have accountability. We can take responsibility for our actions. When workplace trust is established through embracing disciplined thinking, it creates a positive environment where collaboration and innovation, and of course, good, effective teamwork can thrive. You have to make your people feel secure in knowing that their colleagues and their leaders are making decisions based on careful consideration with the best interests of the team in mind. And ultimately, that will really foster a sense of trust and, of course, mutual respect. And another byproduct is cooperation among individuals in the workplace. So, just to make this concept a little bit more concrete, I have prepared to take you through the true-to-life story of Siegen's pandemic panic, told in 2 mental models. So just a caveat, there's a lot of mental models out there. What you will hear about today are just 2 of our most commonly used mental models. And then another caveat, the stories were simplified and also sanitized a bit to keep confidentiality on some of our strategies, right? So tale number 1, this is about the inversion mental model. You know that feeling when there's a problem, a really, really big problem, and panic is setting in. This mental model helps you flip your anxiety and nervousness into confidence, even if the information is incomplete, so that you can act. You can act just in time. It springs you to timely action. You don't have to freeze. And this happened to us during the pandemic. And I think it happened to a lot of us. But for Siegen, it was a near-death situation because the way we were set up, our business, we had 3 sites, and all applicants were processed. They, on a day-to-day basis, face-to-face in all those 3 sites. And all of our processes were face-to-face, and the tools that we have were for face-to-face. we were definitely not ready for lockdowns. We weren't even ready for any work from home, setup. And of course, the leadership in our organization quickly came up with strategic plans like for resolution or resilience, reformation, reimagination. I won't go through the details anymore, but it's very sound. But it was so complicated. When you're about to die, which one would you prioritize first, right? It's, where do you actually start? Um, how will a business like us act fast to survive? This is my favorite. We listened to Charlie Munger, who said, "All I want to know is where I'm going to die, so I'll never go there." So the question was, Charlie, how is Sijan gonna die? How will our business die? So what we did was we applied the inversion mental model. We thought about what not to do. We anticipated the obstacles and the pitfalls. We shifted our perspective to make better decisions. We wanted to know what not to become or where not to end up. All right. So usually, because our thinking is we were trying to look at the goal and then we would plan according to that goal, plot out the steps working towards that. But when you're running out of time, it's always good to invert. Always invert. See how you're gonna die. Are you gonna get to that, worst case scenario? Why? So you prioritize addressing what really needs to be addressed. So just to continue my story, during the pandemic, we identified Sijan's dumb ways to die. As I mentioned, our business had 3 sites where applicants were processed face to face. We were definitely not ready for the lockdowns, but our clients were still hiring. Applicants were pouring in more so than before, of course. And we identified the things that are gonna kill us. And as I said, these were simplified to address confidentiality. But first was to stay in denial, ignore the lockdown, continue to congregate hundreds of applicants daily on site. Then we can also disregard employee safety and kill our organizational culture in the process. Ask our team to go back to the office and report back to work. And maybe, hey, let's not address the near-term cash management leaks that we have. Let's maintain the current supplier contracts and overhead expenses of all 3 sites. Now we know how we're going to die. We know which ones to address first and fast. So we quickly came up with these solutions. We quickly designed a secure, fully remote process and disciplines from scratch that led to new performance metrics for the team. Before it was per site, and now it was an individual metric that was specialized for them, and it helped us define the new essentials and review our overhead spend. Because of this, we survived and even thrived and grew during the pandemic. We also ended up helping a lot of people in our partner organizations as early as the second or I think third month of the lockdown. And we even helped the government. We had tie-ups and programs with the Department of Tourism for the displaced tourism workers. The second part of the story is the 5 whys method. And we use this whenever we want to ensure that we're solving the right problem. To remove frustrations, this is the method that we use. The 5 whys is a powerful and systematic mental model that delves to the very core of a problem, enabling profound insights and sustainable solutions. It empowers transformative thinking and uncovers elegant solutions that transcend surface level fixes. Basically, it's asking why at least 5 times. And it's very important, the point that it's where it says transcend surface level fixes. At Sijan, we want to do actual work with good results. So we don't ever want to do simulated work. So we need to get to the root cause of every problem. And we take inspiration from the apocryphal quote of Albert Einstein. If I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about solutions. So this is an example of how we applied the 5 whys method, still a tale during the pandemic panic era of Siegen Solutions. So our clients were still hiring. and we were getting a lot of applications, but sadly, majority of the applicants were failing. So as a leader, what would be your knee-jerk reaction? It can be that, applicants are failing. Maybe our sourcing team needs to refine their, profiling techniques, or maybe we should review and refine our screening process for better matches, or the worst kind of mindset, we can't do anything about it. Our partners have higher standards now because there are more applicants, and sadly, most of the applicants lack the skills. But if you apply the 5 whys method, then you'll be able to drill it down to the root cause of the problem. So let's start again. Majority of the applicants are failing. They reach up to the final exam level, and this is something that we've noticed. They reach up to the final exam level, but then they fail. Why? Because they have no confidence, no right mindset, and they get surprised that the multi-stage application, it's just so stringent, multi-stage application process for the BPO industry. And why do they get surprised? Because they don't get the benefit of attending. We used to have a 2-hour briefing training session that we provided on site before the pandemic. So they don't get the benefit of that. But still, we, created a Zoom session out of it. So why? Because, sadly, they go in and out of our Zoom training sessions, and, they don't finish most of it. Why? Because their attention is limited, or because their availabilities are varied. So that's the problem. If we didn't go through the 5 whys method, we would have solved incorrect problems, and maybe they're not even problems. So our solution was to think of a clever way to keep the integrity of the training course intact and allow the applicants to access it on demand, while providing an automated way to track the course completion. So it has to be online, it has to be adaptable to multiple screens, it has to be multimedia, it has to run 24/7, and it has to be on demand. If they stop in the middle, they can still continue, And it brought us to a solution that may be common now, but mind you, pre-pandemic, only the e-learning companies like Coursera or Udemy were doing this. We launched onliversity.com, which is still helping a lot of people. I'm happy to say we have over 70,000 active students, and it's still growing by the day. We have different courses there. We were even featured on GMA7 and different publications for giving hope to our kababayans in need during the pandemic. So wrapping it up, how do you know when you have a problem? Which mental model do you use? I gave you 2 examples today, but there are many, many more. It's always healthy to embrace, a lot of mental models and expand your cognitive toolbox. Some of my favorite ones are listed here. My favorite ones are first principles thinking and the map is not the territory. And I'm still learning a lot more. The important thing is to start with 1 or 2 and then apply it in your personal and workplace decision making until it becomes natural, and that you have re-engineered your mind with uncommon common sense. Yes, of course, mental models are not perfect, but useful. Why? It allows us to make better predictions. It helps us clarify cause and effect relationships and simplify complex systems. It also helps us unravel the true underlying issues and problems, just like my example a while ago. It springs us to action despite incomplete information, just like tale number 1. And it fosters innovative approaches to problem solving. So this is common sense. Disciplined thinking and decision making lead to workplace trust, because it will help you reduce your bias. It also helps, especially leaders, it also helps keep our ego in check. You also have less reliance on luck. You can be more consistent. It allows you to transcend short-lived successes and focus on long-term growth, thereby enabling you to earn your team or your supervisors or your clients' trust. So just to conclude, these are the 5 actionable insights that can help you drive meaningful change from this talk. 1 is an organization can only gaze upon the long-term horizon when you nurture exceptional decision makers. This should be deliberate on the leader's part. within your organization develop this among your team members so that they possess the mindset, the skills, and the capabilities to make forward-thinking choices. And second, learn, practice, and apply, a breadth of mental models to counter ego and unlock undisciplined thinking. Third, to ensure your team is solving the right problem, use the 5 whys method. Just ask why, until you get to the root cause of the problem. And fourth, invert the approach. Use the inversion model approach to solve hard problems, so that you can get to effective solutions. Because it will give you a fresher, perspective on things. And lastly, when disciplined thinking is embraced, workplace trust flourishes, creating a foundation of confidence and also collaboration among team members, because doing the right thing becomes frictionless and as easy as possible. So that's it. If you want to learn mental models with me, I'm still a student and will forever remain a student of cognitive frameworks. Connect with me on LinkedIn and subscribe to my LinkedIn newsletter called The Boss Mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aya. Very insightful sharing. There are a lot of comments on the chat as well, an audience saying that they like the practical examples that you are giving.
Thank
Aya,
you.
I have a question for you before you invite Ben back. So I know, Aya, you shared with me that you spent significant amount of time mentoring your people to be, better decision makers through the use of the mental models which you shared. Right. But then decision making, as we know, it is a cognitive exercise, right? It includes reasoning, critical thinking, attention, memory. But then now, more than ever, there's an emphasis on leadership soft skills because of mental health issues, emphasis on employee well-being. So my question is, how does equipping your managers to be better decision makers come to play with this? Like, how does equipping your leaders to be competent decision makers help build the soft aspect of it, building a psychologically and emotionally healthy workplace? Where's the connection between the two?
Well, I'm sure many of us here have dealt with bosses or team members who we think lack professional maturity. So we have to remove our egos and see through that, that veil of biases. So the effective decision making, it plays strongly in the context of employee well-being, because it requires our managers, our leaders, to be more attentive and considerate of the unique needs and the challenges faced by the team members. And they are this really. They are able to practice authentic care because they are able to practice the mental models needed for them to see, through their biases. So by equipping them with the skills for effective decision making, they can make sound judgments and thoughtful decisions. And this fosters supportive work environment that prioritizes employee well-being and mental health. And they are better equipped to identify potential risks or stressors that may affect employee well-being, so they can proactively address these issues and implement the appropriate support mechanisms.
Those are great points. So as leaders, we actually create that climate, having a psychologically, emotionally healthy workplace for the people's brain to perform, fully. Let's invite Ben back here.
Right.
Ben, we have questions for you too. I didn't get to ask you earlier. Hi, Ben.
Hi.
And if anyone in the audience has questions, just feel free to send it on the chat. Okay, so Aya mentioned this earlier, Ben also mentioned it. To some extent, we all have personal biases, right? Conscious or unconscious. We all agree with that. So, and these biases, it could have been formed as we were growing older. It was probably built through good or bad experiences, cultural influences, social norms, and basically just by how our brains are wired. So the question, I think, first for Ben, and Ben, this is a question from a colleague, Rhea, who asked me to mention her name. Hi, Rhea. So
Only
Ben, a
question.
question for you is, how do these biases affect our ability to trust?
Right. Well, first of all, biases is just an offshoot of the brain's programming to keep us alive by conserving energy. So that's where the biases come from. Cognitive rational thinking is effortful and energy consumptive. So it's actually generationless based. It happens across time. So the first thing we can do is just be aware. Uh, Thank you, Tony, for the leadership you're taking in educating the marketplace. I am just sure that Great Place to Work Philippines will be a great purveyor of world-class consultancies and learning events in the future added on to what you're doing. But you have brought to the fore what Aya's done in order to use mindsets to lead teams during turbulent times, and even science. So the first thing we can do is to be aware that we have biases. It's actually all over the internet, but not many people are aware. Or even if they're aware they have biases, they do not care less. They want the other person to adjust and not them. And second would be to consider current factors that may affect your decision. For example, if I were talking to somebody and you mentioned specifically in the area of trust, I will just stop myself. What is unique in my situation now that in a normal situation whereby I seem to be giving this person a hard time? Am I under stress? Did I wake up early? Did I miss breakfast? And those things will give you a revelation that you're not being fair. Also, look for patterns in your past behavior when you felt you made world-class and replicable bias-based decisions, because not all biases are bad. Some biases keep us away from bad situations. And lastly, practice intellectual humility, which, as Aya said, it's just openness to recognize that we don't know everything. We don't have all the questions. We don't have all the answers. So with those, recognize your biases and know that the situation now may be different from the situation before or in the future, that will make your decisions about trusting somebody as effective as it should be.
Thanks, Ben. So awareness, identifying those patterns that we have, and intellectual humility. Intellectual humility, big word, very powerful, but much needed. Thanks, Ben. I'll move to Aya. Aya, for the audience, if you were there earlier, if you joined us earlier during the webinar, I shared some charts wherein some of the common biases, in workplaces, they do not negatively affect the workplace culture at Siegen. So, like, one of the common lowest scoring statements in our Great Place to Work Trust Index survey is that I'm paid fairly for the work that I do. Only about 70% of employees saying yes to that. But at Siegen, it's 100% of their employees saying that, yeah, I'm paid fairly for the work that I do, and which is very, very impressive. I saw in the chat that I think it was Nadine who's also asking something similar to what I'm about to ask. So, Aya, can you share with us at least 2 practices that you have at Siegen that resulted to consistent positive experiences around their perception around pay, favoritism, promotions? How does better decision making help address those? What have you been doing? What's your secret?
Oh, well, I don't think it's much of a secret, but we know that we cannot improve what we cannot measure. So for example, it's being compensated fairly. Then of course we need to do research on what is fair compensation for our people, so that's something that we can improve. So we really need to see the truth and know if it's our biases that are activated at the moment. We need to make sure that we are basing it on data, on things on data, and we are aware that everyone has a blind spot, and sometimes the interpretation of data might not be complete. That's why we rely on both quantitative and qualitative data. My team knows that when they need me to do something, to take action on, they have to present both quantitative and qualitative data. Um, Even on the salary, for example, there's a lot of one-on-ones going on for us to understand what are the needs of our, employees. And there's plenty of opportunities for us to interface with leaders who give us feedback on how their teammates are doing. So, and even, as early as when they enter Siegen, we expose junior members of our team on data data analysis and qualitative feedback early on so that they would know how to correctly interpret it. So that's it. It's not really a secret, but just making sure that we know the truth, we have enough information, and we know how to correctly interpret the information. May it be from a business perspective, or it's all about personal reasons or career decisions.
Thanks, Aya. Those are practical examples again. Thank you for that. I'll move on to another question, something that I got from the chat. For both of you, what are some sample strategies to manage individual team emotions to cultivate trust? I guess this is when, I guess the stage that MIGS is more active. So how do we as leaders, how can we effectively manage that moment? Do you want to start first, Aya?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? I didn't catch one or two words.
Yeah, what are some sample strategies to manage individual team emotions so that you can cultivate trust?
Oh, we don't waste time. When there's something that's about to start and we feel it, the leaders feel that there's, a miscommunication that might spark, the wrong emotions, we address it, nip it, at the bud. That's her strategy. Addressing people concerns, come first. And our people can attest to this. I would call for one-on-one Zoom, out of the blue, because I need to explain something and put their minds, in the right perspective. The over communication of things and, being able to work cohesively, we can do that at any time. That's very important to us. We don't waste a day to talk to these people about things. We're not the type of leaders who would say, okay, let's schedule that next week. No, it has to be scheduled today, if possible. We have to talk to that person to be able to correct the information in the head so that, the right emotions will come out, not the wrong ones.
So really actively being available to address those immediately, because those are also things that are important to those people.
Yes.
Ben, can I ask you to answer the same question? What are some sample strategies to manage individual team emotions?
Right. One of the more radical discoveries of recent times because of brain imaging is that the default reaction of the brain is emotional, not rational. Think about it. Tony, you have a son, and the others. You don't teach a child to lie. And granted, again, I was discussing this with the neuroscience practitioner last night, and she mentions because the prefrontal cortex is not yet formed. But basically, no. The amygdala makes is formed, and that child or that person would rather react emotionally first because it is less energy demanding rather than think through it. So that is a universal, the neurobiological chemistry of the brain is universal, but the way we practice it globally is cross-cultural and personal. So that's one key thing for us to realize that the default emotion, the default response of the brain to any stimuli is emotional. Then count to 10 or put in some rational thought, you might be able to balance it and put in text. So the SCARF model was first developed by David Rock, Neuro Leadership Institute back in 2004. And with advances in neuroimaging technology, they were able to confirm it. So it was brought forth by David Rock based on observation, but later on, neuroimaging devices and technology just confirmed that indeed SCARF, which is status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness, are the 5 catch-all triggers that make MIGS agitated. Parang Incredible Hulk. If you remove trust from somebody, if you remove SCARF from somebody, it turns into the Incredible Hulk. Whereas if you nurture trust, it does the reverse thing. So if they want specifics, for example, status, basic standing and importance in the office. If your office mates just basically disrespect you, you wouldn't want to come in. And there's a funny one because I was doing consultancy work for a large conglomerate this week. And they have this big issue about uh, handing out garbage cans. Remember, per cubicle, in all of the offices I've gone to, per cubicle, they have a garbage can. In this large conglomerate, you have to be of a certain rank to be qualified to be issued a garbage can. Okay lang, so that's their culture. Now, come the pandemic, you have supply chain challenges. They were not able to get from the usual supplier. So the recent promotees got inferior garbage cans. And they took a slight, they were insulted by it. Their status was affected. When it comes to certainty, when you saw, for example, a Maximus from Gladiator, he said, guys, and he was talking to total strangers. They didn't know each other. They were all slaves. Guys, we fight together. We will survive. And that's certainty. And then when it comes to autonomy, you want to be able to give your people some discard, some leeway into applying their personality as long as they get the work done. So micromanaging people is not a good way to foster autonomy. And of course, you have related this, make sure the proper people are invited to meetings or at least in group gatherings. And fairness, if you assign more work to others or if you give more pay to others for the same amount of work, these are all that trigger MIGs. And when MIGs is triggered, your prefrontal cortex shuts down. So it's a double whammy. You become overly emotional because you are stressed and you're not able to close it down. Even if you count to 1 to 100 instead of 1 to 10, your prefrontal cortex just shuts down.
Thanks, Ben. I can sit with you here all day and continue the questions that I have, but we have only 3 minutes left. I think I'll close with this quote from my favorite author and a psychologist, Dr. Henry Cloud. I know, Ben, you know him. Great leaders are those who set the right environment for the people's brain to fully function as they were designed. And I think that's what we learned today from Ben and Aya. Our jobs as leaders, it's really to lead in such a way that our people can do what they are best at doing, using their unique gifts and brains for best results. And as leaders, we have that powerful influence, to be able to create that environment that will help our people perform at their best. Now, considering and knowing what we learned from Ben and I on how the brain works and how equipping our leaders to be our colleagues to be better decision makers, also the use of mental models can help achieve that. Thank you, Ben and Aya.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks. We'll pass it over to Zoe.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Oh, Ben.
Zoe, before I saw in the chat boxes, there were some requests for copies of the presentation. Guys, I want to thank Great Place and Siegen and Zoe. I will send the PowerPoint version of the PDF version, a sanitized version to Zoe. Just get in touch with her and you can get whatever you missed with my presentation.
That's very generous of you, Ben. Thank you. So we will be sending and sending emails to each and every one of our attendees today. And thanks to Ben, you'll get a copy of his presentation. Now, I'd like to thank our speakers once again. Thank you so much, Ben. Thank you so much, Aya. And thank you, Tony, for that insightful dialogue. And you can find our speakers on LinkedIn to continue following their journeys. And I'm sure everyone's looking forward to the recording of this session, which will be available in the next few days on our website. Now, these last few moments will be used to share a little more about our certified community, which organizations we've worked with, and why our mission is so important. And just so our speakers don't get any fatigue, feel free to turn off your camera for now. We really do appreciate the smiley faces that you have flashed in the last hour. Now, everyone wants to hire great talent. It's better for business, better for your current employees, and better for your customers, whether B2B, B2C. So when a company has a great workplace culture, as our speakers have talked about, that resonates all throughout the chain. And we've proven this at Great Place to Work. Now, on screen are the many organizations we've certified in the past year and counting. People talk about your company without you asking because it's genuine. We call that employer branding, and credibility elevates your employer brand. It makes you desirable. So we at Great Place to Work, we give you globally recognized credibility, or as we call it on our team, the one badge to rule them all. Now, getting certified is not a complicated process, but we understand this is new for a lot of companies, especially in our country. We've had a couple of attendees here who are not yet Great Place to Work certified, so you can scan the QR code on the screen to learn more. But to give you an overview at Great Place to Work, we are powered by what we call the Trust Index model. This is based on 30 years worth of research, and we believe that the 5 dimensions of a great workplace are credibility, respect, fairness, pride, and camaraderie. To get certified, your employees will be asked to answer a Trust Index survey. It takes less than 20 minutes to do, and they can fill this up on their laptops or on their phones. It's not an inconvenience. After the survey, your HR team fills out a culture brief, which is a questionnaire that tells us who you are you an affiliate of a parent company, your biography, the basics. When your survey closes, you get your results in real time. Are you excelling in company pride? Perhaps the gap in your culture is respect. From there, we have in-house consultants that can help you make sense of your results so that you are equipped to take action on your people, for your people, just as our speakers have talked about today. Because you have to remember that your employees, your people are the backbone of your company. So let's say you've launched your survey in the company, you've passed the global threshold, aka the point at which your employees believe you're a great place to work. You're then given a trademarked certification badge that you can use to recruit, to celebrate, to advertise, and instill pride within your organization. And you can trust us on this when we say your vibe attracts your tribe. The more people know about how much you value employee engagement, the more you attract people of value. So once again, my name is Zoe Rasal. I'm the marketing business partner for Great Place to Work Philippines. Thank you so much for taking your precious time out of the day to learn about how leaders can reframe their mindset to build high trust teams. In partnership with Siegen Solutions and co-presented by 24/7 AI. If you'd like to support us and the speakers, please answer the short survey afterwards to give your feedback, even if it's just to say hello. And with that out of the way, thank you so much and have a greater day ahead.